Black Horse Pony. Aha! We need to get rid of the overlying thing. It never works, does it? Never ever works. But nonetheless, we will find it. We will get it. You are both on stage. It's just that I've got you covered.
In many ways,
what I've got covered with. There we go. All three of us, all in one place. Now, just before you bring your surprises this morning, I wonder if I could just tell the viewers that at 10:30, Stuart Dolby will be along with a cracking story and questions about the council accounts, which have neither had draft accounts nor audit accounts since 2019. So a few questions need to be asked, I think. Just to alert people to what's coming up a little later in the morning. And now you two can fire away.
Well, good morning, Keith. Good morning, Philip.
You're freezing up,
hear
Richard.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened, but
you sound all right to me. Yeah.
Okay.
No, you sound okay, but at my end, and it's for once it's not my Wi-Fi. You're sort of freezing up and going blurry.
I'm practicing to be like that chap. I think it was in Spain who decided he wanted to steal things from this high-end clothing and jewelry store. And so he went in there, he put on some of the clothes that they had, and he went to the window very still, making out to be a dummy. And then once the shop closed, a mannequin, once the shop closed, he went and looted the place. That is the true story.
Yes.
No,
the other story I've heard to that effect is that a chap kept on carrying stuff out of a yard in a wheelbarrow, and they knew he was stealing something, but they couldn't figure out what, and it turned out to be the wheelbarrows.
Yeah.
Well, my equivalent of that is a rather more serious story whereby Arundel Castle has many, many treasures, one of which was the rosary beads allegedly held by Mary Queen of Scots when she was beheaded.
Josh?
And that was the jewel in the crown. Well, two men, still uncaught, posed as tourist visitors, but secreted themselves in the castle, and then in the dead of night stole the rosary beads and other artifacts, and they have never been found.
Ooh.
Before we start our main topic, Philip, I just want to, and I'm sure, I know that you agree with these sentiments, to express our deep sadness about the early passing of Benjamin Zephaniah.
Quite so. Radio 3 has just read one of his poems.
Yeah. 65, polymath, came from utter poverty, one of 9 children in Birmingham. You know, being one of 9 children is bad enough, but being from Birmingham is pretty tough. But worked his way through. Extraordinary fellow.
Agreed.
But, you know.
When did he die, Richard?
It was, I think it was Wednesday he died. And he had a undiagnosed brain tumor that only became apparent 2 weeks before. So it was like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I know that's a sad note, but it's something worth, certainly for my part, putting on record, because he was such an extraordinary individual. Philip, we never, because we witter on like the 3 characters.
No, you witter on.
Well, yeah, but
here, listening to you witter on, and occasionally getting a sensible word in. Carry on wittering. Come on.
That's because for these purposes, we are the 3 fellas from Last of the Summer Wine, and I have little doubt that you are Compo.
You're the one who looks like Compo.
I do wonder whether you're Compos Mentis, but that's a slightly different point.
Yeah, well,
it's just as well you went on yesterday, Philip.
Could you repeat that, Keith?
It's just as well you weren't on yesterday.
Yes. I ignored the link. I was very tempted to open it and join you, actually, but I hadn't seen it at the right time.
I thought that you would think that I was crowing it over you.
No, I wouldn't think that. Anyway, carry on wittering. Have you been to West Wittering, Richard?
I've wittered all my life. But Phil, we're going to talk about food and what I'd like to do, because I know that you cook in a competent way. You're not a chef.
At best.
I cook in a competent way, but I'm not a chef. Neither of us are trained, I know. I just wanted to ask you what your favorite dishes are that you make at home.
Well, there's a variety, but the ones I make from scratch tend to be, well, for example, I do a ragu, which is the real name for a bolognese sauce. Anybody from Bologna have no idea what a bolognese sauce is. They call it a ragu. Similarly, chili. I do chili from scratch. I do a variety of pork dishes. Obviously, I don't cook. I don't rear the pork, but one of our favourites here is pork belly, done in particular with Chinese 5-spice and honey and ginger and that sort of stuff.
And would you have that with rice, or how? What carbohydrate would you have with that?
Well, I personally have it with rice.
Yeah.
although Mrs. M is a great fan of our homemade roast potatoes, which, Keith, we do in an air fryer, which is ideal for them. Have you bought yourself an air fryer yet?
No, not yet. I haven't. My feet haven't touched the ground. I will do it this weekend, probably. Yeah.
That's because you're on a scooter.
The scooter is to be fixed on Tuesday. In the meantime, I'm hobbling, I'm afraid.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yes. I mean,
I hope you're getting. Sorry, go ahead.
No. If I have the time, I do a variety of curry dishes, sides and mains from Madder Jaffrey's excellent first cookbook. But for that, you need so many ingredients and so much time. I'll probably have it now, but again, to make a Rogan Josh, for example, from scratch for 6 people is rather wasted when there's only 2 of you.
Yeah.
And I do roast dinners. I decided last weekend that my days of doing full joints are numbered because I made a complete mess of a very straightforward, very good quality pork shoulder and crackling joint. I just I lost the plot and got the timings completely wrong.
So you're not talking about a joint.
You say you're not a chef, but you do wonderful.
No. I just want you to clarify that when you say you're no good at joints, you're not rolling your own, are you? I just want to be clear about that.
Oh no, I'm not rolling my own.
No, it's not. It's not spliffing stuff that you're doing.
No, there's nothing spliffing about my cooking, I can assure you.
But just on something that you and Keith have spoken about, I will never own an air fryer.
No, I knew you'd say that.
I never.
You rather deprive yourself of good equipment, you know.
Well, I don't know. You haven't seen my equipment for a while. You don't know how good it is.
Well, I never have, thank God.
No,
not many women can say that, but I'm really
Thank you. It means that when I go out, and it's not often I do, but when I go out and eat out, I will often have something like battered squid, which I love.
I do too.
But I wouldn't make it at home. I don't like the.
You're in my opinion, because based on so many conversations we've had, one of your signature dishes that makes my mouth water is you do bouillabaisse, don't you?
Yes, that's true.
So talk us through it. You go to Dunbar for your well-earned breaks.
You need to go somewhere where they've got good fresh fish, and I don't mean what you can get in Tesco or Waitrose, because it's just a sort of litany of salmon and whitefish.
Yeah, but you use Morrison's. You say they're very good.
Morrison's there's one in Brighton, as you know. There's one in Seaford, and they have a much better fish counter. Because if you want to make bouillabaisse, as you'll appreciate, Philip, some people just won't eat these things, but you do need squid, you do need mussels, ideally some nice big shell-on prawns that people can then get their hands mucky when they cut them apart. And it's really just a fish stew. You cook the fish. You do need some whitefish in it as well. So you cook the big fish up. You save the liquid because that's your stock. And too many people, in my view, I've got some quite strong views on cooking, as you will hear. too many people chuck away things. Like, for example, open a tin of I love chickpeas. Open a tin of chickpeas. Don't pour the liquid down the sink, because in fact that that is, in an odd sort of way, sort of the beginnings of a stock. It's got loads of flavour in it. It's good for you, but people don't. Anyway, so you've got that veg in there, whatever veg you want to put in there. Either a tin of tomatoes or a jar of passata. Cook that up. Then the thing that makes a bouillabaisse special, as I know you know, Philip, is that you then have little toasted bits of bread, ideally from a baguette. So it's a sort of round piece like that.
Yeah.
And you make what's called a riz, which is a very garlicky, thick.
Yeah. So tell us how you make your riz.
It starts with breadcrumbs, because that gives it its body. It has some smoked paprika in it, and it has a lot of garlic. And you whiz that up, and you end up with a slightly orangey yellow, as I say, paste.
Yeah.
And then you have a nice hard cheese that you grate, and the fish goes back into the pot.
Super. Thanks,
It goes into your bowl, and then you put your bread with the riz on top of it, so it sinks in a bit, and then you put the cheese on top, and I love that.
So,
but
let me go back to Dunbar, where you have your holidays.
Yeah.
You go down, do you not, as soon as you possibly can, to the fish stall or store or shop? And so the white fish you choose for the bouillabaisse is what?
Frankly, it doesn't matter. It's whatever they've got. Often it's pollock. It's nowadays rarely cod, because cod is, once again, sadly, it's not endangered, but it's just less available. And I don't actually go necessarily to the store, because if you go and mooch around the harbour, or there are two harbours in Dunbar, but the one where the fishing boats come in, if you get there early, there are these chaps who are coming off the boats, and they sort of know that they've probably overdone their quota of what they're meant to bring in, and so you can negotiate with them to I'm not handling stolen, they're not stolen, but you could sort of negotiate with them and say, well, you're gonna have to chuck that back, can't you? I'll give you whatever for it.
Well, you can't get much fresher than that.
No.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Let me carry on with my bugbears, if I may, for a moment.
Your bed bugs.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, I don't deep fry deliberately.
But an air fryer doesn't. An air fryer isn't a fryer.
No, I know. Yeah. But
it doesn't use fat at all. Anyway, carry on.
No. Unlike you, I do like cooking, and I like cooking slowly, and I find it just takes me away from the rather busy balance of my life, and I can be in the kitchen and on my own doing something that, as I said, my mother always said food is love. And I'm really looking forward to Christmas and cooking for my daughters.
Well, I envy you that, because I'm having to do it all Christmas Day because my son Charlie, who is an excellent cook, won't be here.
Right.
And I can't pretend to enjoy it. But there we are.
Well, you see, it's an odd thing because I enjoy cooking the turkey. Well, first of all, I enjoy going to see.
Tell us, you have very skilled ways of doing poultry. Tell us how do you do your turkey?
Butter under the breast skin. You can get your hand underneath. It's a slightly unattractive, slightly gynecological process.
Well, you're an expert at that. Carry on.
Yeah. So you smear that with butter inside, salt on the outside. I quite like using citrus fruit and an onion inside my turkey. I don't actually stuff it in the stuffing way. And then I'll cook it and start cooking it upside down, as it were.
Yeah.
And then flip it over. Pigs in blankets, obviously, that just goes without saying. And then I do sort of typically two sorts of stuffing, both with Pete's stuffing meat, which is great. One of which will have cranberries in it.
Yeah.
And the other will have chestnuts in it.
Yeah, you mentioned chestnuts, yeah.
Yeah.
And
so I get the pleasure of going to see Pete and getting stuff. I get the pleasure of cooking it. And then the biggest pleasure I get out of the whole process is come Boxing Day, I strip the meat off the turkey. I might boil the bones up for stock for later and freeze them. But then make because I've also ordered a ham from him, making a sort of turkey and ham pie. But
no, again, I was going to bring this up. Your pies are wonderful. I mean, you've occasionally treated me to little tasters and just fabulous. And obviously you make your own pastry.
Yes, and I'm afraid to say, Phil, that the arsenic I put in that piece of pie didn't seem to work.
No, it worked in rather strange ways.
Yeah.
It sterilised me. But
I thought you'd been sterilised years ago. I've got to say, Phil. But there we go.
Well, no, you're wrong about that. But yeah, it didn't kill me, and it tasted good. Tasted good.
That's right. That's right. But it's I will also seek to obtain from Pete some other sort of piece of game to go in with the turkey and the ham. That's useful.
Woodcock suit.
Sorry?
Woodcock suit.
Absolutely. And woodcock could cock, frankly.
Yes, it's my favourite poultry game, if you like.
No, I know, yeah. And also some of the leftover chestnuts in the pie. So it becomes a game pie, and I just love game pie. I'm actually dribbling as I sit here thinking about it.
Yes, I can see you're dribbling, but the beard's catching it. Don't worry.
All right. Yeah.
But it's not just that type of pie you make, is it?
Tell me.
I'm sure you've given me equally laced with arsenic things like steak and kidney pie and.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but you dismiss it, but you make these things yourself, don't you?
And as I say, it is very good. And I would encourage the one man and possibly his dog, if the dog is allowed up to the kitchen top, to go and cook their own food. Let me tell you one other, because as I said, I've got a range of things that I'm going to complain about when it comes to food. I've complained about air fryers.
Yeah, but you don't understand what they are.
I do understand what they are, and I'm just not interested. A thing that genuinely, and always has annoyed me is people come round for dinner, and you've made their food, and then I go a bit Marco Pierre White, because before they've eaten anything, they put salt all over their food.
Yeah.
Now, you don't know what it tastes like, dear people. Secondly, you're affecting your health because it will raise your blood pressure, having too much salt. And thirdly, it's a sort of arms race with salt, where the more you put on the food, the less easy it is to actually get the taste of the food. And so the next time you need to put more salt on it. It's like monosodium glutamate, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, we very rarely have guests because I've become even less sufferable than ever. But we don't put condiments on the table. If people ask,
Sorry, what don't you put on the table?
salt and pepper.
Oh, right. Sorry, I thought you said something. I had visions of a slightly different party there when you.
No, condiments.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And you know I said that. You're just trying to be a smart ass. But somebody who will agree with you totally is Mrs. M. She is an enemy of salt, really. I mean, it has its uses, and she would agree with you. Taste the food first. Yeah. If you really need it spicing up, then okay, we'll give you salt. But you know, it's been cooked for you to taste as cooked, and there's already seasoning in it. So I'm with you on that.
Keith will know this, that there was a Chinese takeaway just down the road from me here, which in fact is now closed. And occasionally when my daughters were at home, they'd say, "Oh, Dad, it's Friday night, can we have a takeaway?" And only very occasionally, I would think, actually, that's easier, isn't it? Let's get a Chinese takeaway. And the problem I found with that is that I'd be waking up at 3 a.m, needing to drink 2.5 pints of water.
Absolutely.
Because of the amount of salt. I don't know, Keith, what's your stance on salt?
My wife never cooked with it. So she was not averse to a little sprinkling.
We're talking about cooking here, Keith.
Sorry?
We're talking about cooking here now.
Yes. I'm sorry, I wasn't following the conversation carefully, was I?
No.
I don't cook with salt either. But that doesn't mean much because I don't cook a lot, as you know. I mean, first of all, you're right. It takes time. It takes concentration. And I'm never home long enough to give food the justice that it deserves with either of those things. However, is listening to you about Christmas dinners, if I may. First of all, I am going to honor my late wife because for the first time ever in my life, I'm going to be alone on Christmas Day, which doesn't bother me one little bit. But I'm going to, she loved seafood. And in fact, we once went to Dieppe and she had, we got off the ferry. she had lobster for breakfast, lobster for lunch, and lobster for supper before we came home on the ferry. So lobster is going to be my main course. But first thing in the morning around the Christmas tree when we open up presents, and I don't know where this came from, but it was a tradition in our house. I looked it up, and I think it's true of around Leicestershire and South Notts and that sort of area. Is I always have pork pie.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
unfortunately, I have to have a commercial pork pie as close to a Melton Mowbray as possible. And I told you the other day about being invited all the time to a boyhood friend when I was quite young and learned to appreciate food and good manners for that matter. That lady, Mrs. Lamb, actually made her own pork pies and they were absolutely marvelous. So if you make your own crust, you must let me sample a pork pie one day. But
Yes.
the other things that I like
I'm writing a list, Keith. Don't you worry.
I like a baked potato with lobster. I like a green salad with avocado to accompany it. I like to start with a half dozen at least oysters. I do like the seafood, and I can never remember its name for some reason. It always goes out of my mind at the last minute. It's not prawns. It's the things that look like little
Longustine.
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 No, sorry. It'll come back to me in a moment.
Okay.
Then I have to confess that I go very commercial and buy some Christmas pudding. I have to be as traditional as I possibly can, but I don't risk myself with a turkey because I'm likely to burn the hell out of it. I do with any meat that I touch. But if you ask me for a favorite meat, and I went down to our local butcher's, Richard, the other day and said if he gets any in, would he let me know? And that is a pork chop with the kidney still cut into it.
Oh, yes. Mm.
So that's my culinary efforts.
So, just in summary about that, you went to France with your wife. She had lobsters and you got crabs. Is that right? I may have misheard.
We can't get away from this, Philip. I'm afraid this morning he's
in a particular he's in a particular frame of mind, Mr. B is, and it's like Jed with a bone. But when I used to go to Dieppe, I would always have what I was led to believe was their local delicacy, fish, which was ray au beurre. And very delicious it was. So, a flat fish, and you scraped the flesh off the underneath and the top, which had like a butter sauce.
Well, the other thing I take myself off to Dieppe just once in a while. I go for 2 or 3 days just as a break, because I rarely get a holiday nowadays. What I like doing is going to the cafe, the sidewalk cafe, at about 7 o'clock in the morning, having croissant and coffee and a brandy in the coffee. And at breakfast time, it is delicious.
No, the one time I've stayed over in Dieppe with friends from the then Chambers, that's exactly what we did. And it's brilliant. Talk about setting yourself up for the day.
Very much.
Cafe cognac with croissant. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, Barton, returning to poultry, not turkey or Christmas, you have your own way of cooking a chicken, don't you?
Well, I've got an oven.
No, don't be facetious. You boil your chicken first, don't you?
I do. I boil it so that it's not quite cooked. I then again
for how long do you boil it?
Until you think it's done.
Right.
Another thing that you've mentioned these already. I just don't use recipes. The people who peddle the recipe books, and you sometimes read them in the newspaper as well, where you think what you're describing there is just pasta with a sauce. There's nothing new. You're just hacking around with.
Absolutely right. But I must say, in defense of cookbooks and paper recipes, is for somebody like me who is not in any way culinary clever, is if you treat a meal like chemistry and do exactly what is said, you can get a half decent one. If I don't do that, I don't get a half decent one. It's all over the place. It tastes awful. 9 times out of 10, it's burned. So there is a place for cookbooks.
Yeah, I get told off regularly by Mrs. M for not following the recipe. I'm told that the recipe is there in black and white. That is what is to be followed. There can be no variation on the theme. Well, there can be.
Yeah. Because in fact, you're the Jimi Hendrix of the kitchen. You're riffing. Yeah.
Scallops. That's what I like. Yes.
Scallops.
Right. Scallops. Oh, right. Okay.
I once had a bad
Scallops for you
experience
too.
with them, and it's probably 30 years ago that I had a bad experience with them, and I haven't eaten them since, I confess. Just one of those things, isn't it?
So you boil the chicken till it's nearly done.
Boil the chicken till it's nearly done, and
that's instinct, isn't it?
Yeah, that's instinct, and you just turn the stove off and let it cool down. Chicken out. You've then got your lovely stock that you retain. You don't pull that away. And then chicken gets its lemon up its bum. And anything
You told me you'd stop doing that years ago, Richard.
The RSPCA didn't, in fact, ultimately prosecute me.
Oh, right. Well, that they missed a trick there.
Yeah.
Actually, Richard, when you talked about boiling a chicken, or Philip said that you boiled it extremely well, that is one of the favorite ways that I like, although I can't cook it. But when I worked at Reuters, we were on Gray's Inn Road, not very far from your hunting, I think, Philip. Possibly yours as well, Richard. And there was a little restaurant run by an Italian, and it was called Saraceno. And sadly, it's gone now, but it was right next door to the ITN building, and Reuters was on the next floor. And the chef and owner was a man called Onofrio. And we got to know him so well because, we would go in there a lot. But every Friday night, we all had to work until 2 a.m. So we would go and have dinner at about 10 o'clock. Once the news at 10 had started and some poor bugger had got to read it, the rest of us actually went next door. And we would ask him for special things. And I said, Onofrio, I understand the Italians boil chicken. Do you think we could have boiled chicken as a change? And it was he cooked it all day, absolutely superb. And it did have, Philip, vegetables stuck up its bum. And it really, really is very, very good. If you can cook that, Richard, I'll come to dinner anytime.
Yes,
I don't remember the invitation, Keith, but
oh, it's all right.
I'll look back on this broadcast and just check. I have to make a confession. Sorry, Philip.
There's nothing like inviting oneself, Richard.
No.
And but don't put salt on the table when he's around.
No, and
I don't know whether you've been watching what's been going on behind him, Richard.
I know.
It amazes me that Ada has any time to do her real job, because all she does is give him coffee. I counted 3 cups of coffee during our time on air.
And there was one before that as well.
I think they want to get him into that.
I'm here for quite early.
No, I have a confession to make, which is that as it's Friday night, I'm going to cook some. It is just white fish with some asparagus.
Oh,
But
lovely. Yes.
I'm also going to go down to the local chip shop and get some chips because Mrs. B loves chips.
I didn't know we had a
Well,
local chip shop.
There again, you see, you've been dismissive about them, but the air fryer does amazing homemade chips. I mean, really good homemade chips.
When I can pay £3 for a big bag of chips from it's on the corner of Westgate Street, Keith.
Ah, right. Oh, I know the one. Yes.
Yeah.
You walk all the way down there, do you?
Yeah. My or I said Mrs. B because she's the one who really wants the chips. My daughter, one of my daughters used to work there when she was in the sixth form,
right?
And so I got to know the people there. And it's a lovely Turkish couple. They were very kind to my daughter, including, dare I say it, financially. But the chap who runs it, is called Bishen. And I've never really plucked up the courage because I want to say to him, you need to rebrand yourself, mate, as Bishen Chips.
That's very clever, yes.
But he's a big fella, and I think, no, I'm not in it.
You're not going to do it as a confrontation, no.
He was, he's very nice to my daughter, but he might just turn. There's always that possibility, isn't there?
I mean, in terms of coining phrases, I like Keith's phrase a few minutes ago, culinarily clever. And you are undoubtedly that, Mr. B. Somebody else who is an absolute natural is my wife. She was actually cordon bleu trained years ago.
Oh, gosh.
And it pisses me off that I can labour in the kitchen producing nothing better than average, which she just about is prepared to eat because she's hungry having had a day at work. And yet she can just turn her hand to any variety of food just like that. And she always gets it right. And yet I'm the bloody idiot who's cooking.
Now, another aspect of cooking, which I do sometimes have trouble with, is baking. It's a completely different skill set, I think, to cooking.
Jackie is a superb baker. Her baking is fabulous, honestly.
Well, I suppose
I'm not just saying that because she's in the house. It's brilliant stuff.
I admire and envy the way that you two eat. I couldn't get past the flour. I can never get the water to the flour just to even start thinking.
No, I'm not claiming to be a baker at all. Far from it. But Mrs. M is, when she's got the time, she'll just. It can be cakes, it can be flapjacks, it can be breakfast bars, it can be fairy. Yeah, it could be anything. Well, it's just excellent.
Yes, you're rubbing shoulders with it, Philip. Whether it's you or whether it's your wife, it's a marvelous thing to me, and the smell in the kitchen is absolutely fantastic.
Oh no, it's lovely.
To me, cooking is half smell anyway.
Yeah.
She hasn't let me rub her shoulders for a long time, Keith.
I think the thing about baking is that, and my failing is that you do need to get the correct quantity of ingredients. So
Are you conceding that you need a recipe book, Richard?
No.
It sounded like it.
No. You have a go, you see how that works, and then you think, right, I've messed that up. Let me try again. And eventually you get it right. But
that's rather wasteful, isn't it? It's just experimental. It's wasteful of ingredients that if you got it right from a recipe, it would be a pretty good start, wouldn't it?
I do recall that I made for one of my daughters when they were very young. She was having a birthday party. And at the time, there was this sort of very popular thing of you bake a sort of chocolate cake in a suet bowl type thing. Turn it upside down, ice it, and then stick a Barbie in the top, so it looked as if Barbie was wearing this beautiful gown. And that went reasonably well until at the party, Mrs. B, in front of all the children and their parents, they were sufficiently young that they had their parents with them. Chocolate cake.
Dear.
And she pulled out Barbie. And Barbie came out perfectly well, apart from the fact that she had a considerable amount of chocolate sponge between her legs. And you could just see all these adults looking at each other going, are you going to laugh? I don't think I can laugh because my daughter's going to ask, why are you laughing? So
yes. All I can say is it's a good job we're before the 9 o'clock watershed.
Yeah. No, so that was the Barbie beaver cake. We didn't repeat it, I should say. But, yeah. Another thing, because I've got my list here of things that annoy me about food. People are entitled to be vegetarian, but I just don't understand them, I have to say.
Well, vegetarians are one thing. The ones I just fail to even register, let alone comprehend, are vegans.
Phil, can you imagine you having an only plant-based diet? You would be creating more gases than an average cow.
Yes, that's probably right. But we all have our procedures. But I am not a vegetarian nor a vegan. I don't, and this isn't a pun, I don't eschew non-meat dishes, but I am an omnivore.
Actually, I'm really impressed with your restraint, Philip, because we're in the presence of Keith Floyd and a drink hasn't appeared yet.
Well, even by my standards, it's too early. But I thought I'd call myself Keith Floyd because I met him once at his restaurant in the West Country. He wasn't cooking that night, so he was absolutely smashed. His son did all. It was a birthday party for very, very old friends who now live in Brighton, but lived down there. Yeah, I bumped into him in the toilet. And
Philip,
yes, go on. Yes, what?
You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you fail to mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence against you. When you start saying, I bumped into a fellow in the lavatories, come on.
it wasn't just a fellow, it was Keith Floyd himself, who was very charming but very smashed. Anyway, back to your list of complaints, Richard. Go on. We've done vegetarians. I had vegans.
Yeah.
What else? What else doesn't suit you about the eating habits of the world we live in?
Well, obviously, any type of fast food.
I'm with you on that.
There are times when.
Yeah, me too.
There are times when you just don't. You think, right, I just need to grab something to eat. But for example, it's many a year since I've been to the charcoal. I used to love going to the charcoal grill and getting a kebab. The one on the high street, Phil.
I love that place. I loved it in there.
And oddly enough, when little Max, my terrier, was still around, I'd go there of an evening to get a couple of kebabs. Not just for me, one for Mrs. B. And they would invariably provide another little box of kebab meat for the dog.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. It may not have been the same people, but they were always good in there. Always.
Yeah, they were.
I don't care for burgers. I don't care for what's the doughy stuff, Italian stuff called?
Gnocchi, pasta,
no.
gnocchi.
Pasta, no, not pasta. The round pancake type thing.
Pizza.
Pizza.
Yes. My main complaint is that many an Italian restaurant calls itself Italian restaurant. All it is pizza and pasta, whereas Italian cooking is far, far wider and greater than that.
You're right.
But could I also say that you spoke about cooking food so that it was just beautiful and delicious? There is a new chef here at the Black Horse, and I come here regularly for my Sunday lunch because to cook a decent Sunday lunch is quite beyond me, and I don't really have the time or the inclination. And it's always been quite good at the Black Horse. But the new chef, I decided to try the roast beef on Sunday, and I have difficulty finishing any big meal now. It just tastes change as you get older, I guess. But this, I actually finished this roast, and it was not only a good choice, good cut, but it was cooked deliciously. It just dripped off the fork. So we do have some half decent places in Lewes where there is somebody knows what he's doing.
Yes,
that's good to hear.
I've heard that from other people about the new chef there, that it's gone up a notch, certainly.
Keith, are you feeling okay? Because you haven't had a coffee for about 5 minutes.
He's gonna get shaky.
Yeah,
there we go. Yeah.
There we go.
Thank God for that.
Can I say that I quite like at home, even in the weekday, to start off with some sort of little starter. Sometimes I have asparagus. Sometimes even gnocchi, commercial gnocchi, I'm afraid. But often I have avocado, which I quite like, and like Douglas time, I ever tasted it, and that is with sort of a little HP vinegar sauce in the middle. But last night, not last night, the night before, I was very ill, and I'm pretty sure it's because I chanced an avocado that I'd had for 2 or 3 days. So just a warning to everybody: if you suspect for one moment that your food is on the cusp, as it were, don't touch it because you'll pay the price. I did.
Yeah, avocados. I mean, if you only had it for a few days, I'm surprised it was beyond its life, because they need to be ripe anyway, don't they?
Yes, they do. But as the place that I buy them from, Waitrose, that's it. They have a whole range, large, small, about to ripen, ripe, and eat quickly. And I always go for the 60 pencer, and that's eat quickly, and I didn't. So it was my own fault.
See.
But just a warning, because as I thought I was going to die at one point. I even wrote my will. I've thrown it away since, but
what, you think that a bad avocado made you that unwell?
Remember that I've got other, as they say, conditions or issues that I have to watch.
I know you have as you were telling me the other day, you have a hiatus hernia.
Yes.
And as I have to do for different reasons, you take lansoprazole.
That's right.
Which is an acid reducer. So we have to be careful with digestive. Whereas Richard, you see, there's nothing wrong with his digestive system.
Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Richard?
We're just going to leave it there, Phil. Now, one other thing that I do like to cook, and albeit I have to take out a new mortgage when I go and see Pete the meat for it, is a fillet steak.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go and see Pete, you say, "You got some fillet steak?" He goes, "Yeah." And he brings out, I may have told you this already, the fillet, and cuts 2 slices of it. And it's just divine. Flash frying it. I'm getting hungry now. Now, another thing that I'd like to talk about in terms of, we haven't got much time, in terms of food, is I feel that people in this country have a completely unnecessary aversion to, I use the term, offal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. I'm a war baby. I love it.
Yeah, lamb's kidneys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lamb's liver. Yes.
Yeah. Or calf's liver as well.
Well, my wife, being Canadian, didn't call it calf's liver. She called it baby beef. She would say, "I have baby beef liver." Yeah.
And people just don't. I went to Pete's earlier in the week, and I've got a haggis in my fridge, which I'm going to eat at some point. And people won't eat haggis.
How long can you keep haggis for in a fridge, Richard?
Oh, forever, effectively.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
It's encased in the skin, isn't it? Yes.
Well, and this is where people get confused, because they say, "Oh, that's a lamb's stomach." And you have to tell them, no, it is contained in a lamb's stomach. You're not eating a lamb's stomach. What you don't do is then go on to tell them what they are eating, which is, there's a lot of oats in there because it's Scottish, lots of pepper and things like that. But then you get on to the fact that it's chopped up lungs and things like that. But I love haggis. I don't know whether you like haggis or not.
I told you my haggis story, didn't I?
Well,
about being in Basel, doing some filming, and the PR man for the bank that we were filming for was he's a Scotophile, if that's the right word. And he said to me, "I have got something really special for you." There was a crew of 3. There's myself, a soundman, and a cameraman. And he took us over to the Hilton in Basel. And we went into the basement restaurant. because he knew the chef and so on. And suddenly the pipes started, and in was piped a haggis. Well, I loved it.
Yeah.
The German cameraman sort of sat there picking at it, and the Frenchman actually took off out of the front door as fast as he could.
What's your view on haggis, Philip?
Yeah, I've eaten it. Not at events like, Burns Night, stuff like that. Because when he was alive, my great friend, whose acting name was Ian Anders, he was in Taggart. He was the Chief Inspector McVitie, but he was also a managing clerk of a solicitor's firm in Camberwell. He was roped in every Burns Night with his kilt and his dirk, whatever you call it, and he would read out, the necessary poetry, and then plunge the blade into the haggis, and he used to do it very well. No, I can eat it, but I can't say it's a favourite, I'm afraid.
There is a club, and the name is just...
You're so intolerant. Yeah, I'm not saying it's because of what it contains. I just didn't like the taste, the heavy seasoning is just too heavy for me.
There is a club, and I just slipped my mind. It's a private members club on the edge of Sloane Square that is all Scottish people. You know the one I'm talking about? And there they have haggis, tatty, and neeps, a standard fare on the table every day.
Yeah, that's how you need to have it, because the tatties and the neeps, plenty of butter on them, do reduce that strong taste of the seasoning in the haggis.
The other thing that
at least you agree with me that it is capable of being quite an overwhelming taste.
It's quite peppery.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I like, not cooked English style, but la tripe, that you have in almost numerous French cafes or restaurants, is absolutely delicious. When it's cooked by the French, it looks like strips of beef.
Yes.
Neither of you are La Tripe fans. I can tell by the look on your face.
I had an experience of that when I was very much younger, of the English version, and it rather turned me away from it.
Yeah.
You see, Keith,
yes.
I was looking blank because, again, the signal wasn't good, and I missed entirely what you were talking about.
La Tripe.
Oh, tripe.
Yes.
Oh, my God. My father loved tripe and onions, and it would make me ill just to look at it. Tripe. Oh, no, that's gone too far now for me. I'm now. I've gone from
But you mentioned, of course, I have the benefit over you two, in as much as I'm a war baby. And so a lot of the food that I ate when I was 4 or 5 or 6 was the offal. I love things like that. A braised heart. I had an aunt, she was my aunt, who would actually buy a bullock's heart and would cook it very carefully. And she claimed that you couldn't tell the difference between that and beef.
It's quite a strong flavour, isn't it?
Now, you do oxtail, don't you, Richard?
Yeah. Oxtail, you just need to cook for 2.5 days. But it is lovely.
I need to leave you guys now for a comfort break, so I'll see you on Monday.
See you Monday, yeah.
Well, we've run our course, so we'll say goodbye. And yes, we have... run our course, I think, this morning. It was very interesting, better than a cooking show, I think. I never quite know what you guys are going to spring on me. But anyway, we shall look forward to seeing you on Monday. And then a week Monday, of course, we're going to have a jamboree. So make sure that you're standing by.
I think on Monday, Keith, before Monday, I'm just going to drop in to the Black Horse and leave some ingredients and cooking materials there. And I think the one man and his dog will quite like watching you trying to cook something.
Yes,
Keith will have to call himself the Galloping Gourmet.
Well, I mean, one thing that Richard has agreed to do is to approach the new owners of the White Hart to see whether we can form a Mirador Television exclusive dining club there for those people who enjoy good food, which I think are getting less and less in Lewes, because we really don't have a first-class restaurant. We have a couple of decent ones and then very good pub food, but a first-class restaurant we do not have. So I'll keep reminding you about that, Richard.
I'm sure you will, Keith. Yes. Anyway, chaps, lovely to see you.
8 o'clock Monday.
See you Monday. Bye.
8 o'clock.
And there we are, the two bees, who once again managed to come up with a surprise. We never know what we're going to talk about. So we're going to disappear for 5 minutes or so. And I think the next item up will be episode 5 of A Bloody Past of a Tiny Town, which will then take us up to around about 10 o'clock. And Stuart Dolby will be along with what I think is the story of the day. So we'll see you in about, what should we say, 10 minutes? Indeed, we will. In about 10 minutes, just while we all take a break. And there's nothing wrong with us taking a little break, is there? No, not in the least. So back at the Black Horse in 10 minutes or so. From Lewes, in the Black Horse pub.